On Thanksgiving Day, I went to my ex-husband's house to surprise my daughter after 5 years apart. But what I saw nearly took my breath away. My daughter, shivering on the front porch, wearing only a thin t-shirt and pajama pants, while the temperature outside was 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, they were clinking glasses at the dinner table, savoring steaming roast turkey and laughing to festive music. Rage surged through my body. I kicked the door open, and the entire room froze. Before I tell you what I did next, hit the like button and subscribe, because right now, I'm about to tell you everything. I'm Evelyn, 35 years old, PhD in fetal medicine. After 5 years working in Japan on a medical partnership project, I returned to the US on Thanksgiving Day. I should have gone back to my little apartment in Illinois, but my heart wouldn't allow it. I was going the other way, to Oklahoma, where my daughter lives with her father and stepmother. I didn't give any notice. I only brought a gift, a set of medical textbooks, and a silver bracelet engraved with the name Sophia, something I once promised to hand to my daughter when she turned 18. While registering to pick up my rental at the Hertz counter in the airport, my phone buzzed with a message from a colleague. "You still planning to drop by their place? Aurora." "Hasn't changed at all," I didn't reply. I just pressed my lips together, thinking of my mother, Joan, who passed away last year after a stroke, who once wrote me a handwritten letter and tucked it in my wallet. "If you ever feel the girl isn't safe, don't hesitate to walk through any door, even if you have to break it down." I'd reread that letter countless times during the flight. Outside, the snow was falling lightly. I started the car, the radio playing an old jazz tune from the 80s, the same music I used to hear every morning during my first year of college. Back then, I had just turned 18, a wide-eyed freshman in medicine, and it was also when I met Benjamin, my ex-husband, 8 years older than me, a research assistant at a seminar on embryology. We dated for 3 months and got married on my birthday. I still remember the shock I felt when I saw 2 red lines on the pregnancy test the next morning, and that was the first time I called myself a mother. We lived together for 12 years, truly happy years, in a little house with a white picket fence, walking hand in hand with Sophia to church every Sunday morning, baking on weekends, and reading fairy tales every night. Until the day I found a strange silk scarf on the sofa, a perfume that wasn't mine, and a photo on Benjamin's computer of him embracing his personal assistant. Aurora. We divorced not long after. Since I frequently traveled for long-term projects in Japan, the court granted him custody. The reason stated in the records was, the father provides a more stable living environment. I remained silent. I thought as long as my daughter was loved, I could take a step back. But over the past 5 years, video calls became fewer and farther between. Sophia's eyes grew sadder, more withdrawn. I remember vividly, just last summer, when I asked about a bruise on her wrist, she said she fell down the stairs. But her voice, trembling slightly and falling flat, haunted me. I stopped at a Casey's gas station off the highway, bought a cup of hot coffee and a box of pumpkin pie, Sophia's old favorite. I grabbed a few mint sticks, too, her childhood snack she used to hide under her pillow. The gas station clerk looked at the sky and told me to be careful. The weather was dropping fast, and ice might be forming. I checked the time, 3:30 p.m., and drove on. Through the windshield, I saw houses along the road beginning to light up for Christmas. One had a sign that read, "Welcome home, troops." Perhaps their son had returned from the army. I couldn't help but think of the last full Thanksgiving dinner my mother hosted. She set an extra seat for Sophia, even though she didn't come. "An empty chair is still part of the family," she said. As I turned into the old neighborhood where Benjamin lived, I saw his pickup and Aurora's SUV parked in the driveway. The house was beautifully decorated, golden lights strung along the eaves, smoke curling from the chimney, windows glowing warmly like a painting. But inside me, the cold began to spread. I parked, stepped out, and was about to ring the bell, then froze. On the front steps, amid a thin layer of frozen mist on the concrete, sat Sophia, curled up, wearing only a thin t-shirt and pajama pants, bare feet pressed against the cold stone. Her lips were blue, arms hugging her knees tightly, eyes blank, and staring into the house, where laughter, clinking cutlery, and television chatter spilled out in full, joyful harmony. I don't remember how fast I ran to her. All I know is I took off my coat, wrapped it around her, knelt down, and whispered, "Sophia, I'm here now." Sophia trembled in my arms, her body cold as stone. I helped her stand. Her legs wobbled, on the verge of collapsing, but she still tried to stay upright. I asked, "Why were you out here?" And Sophia whispered, her voice like smoke dissolving in the wind, "I dropped the pie tray. Aurora got mad." She said I ruined the holiday. I held her hand tightly, feeling the frozen purple of her fingers, her joints stiff with cold, as if she had been sitting there for hours. Inside the house, laughter and chatter echoed from the dining room, cutlery clinking against porcelain plates, the TV playing a Thanksgiving special, as if no one inside knew or cared that a child was locked out in 40 degrees Fahrenheit weather. I led Sophia back to the car, turned the heater on full blast, then rummaged through my bag for the large wool scarf I had brought for the flight, wrapped it tightly around her body. As I wrapped, I rubbed her cold hands like I was trying to transfer warmth straight from my heart. When her hands started to warm, she finally looked up at me, eyes red and voice so small it could have been a pin drop. "You shouldn't have come. If you make a fuss, she'll punish me worse." That sentence gripped my heart like a vice. That's not how a child should speak to her mother. That was the voice of someone who had learned to live in fear, who had learned to apologize before anyone even raised their voice. I brushed her hair from her forehead and whispered, "You won't be punished anymore." I promised. Sophia turned away, said nothing. I looked over at the faded white fence, remembering the warm nights years ago, when we strung up Christmas lights together and Sophia climbed on her father's shoulders to place the little star atop the tree. I sighed, pulled out my phone, and reread a message my mother had sent years before she died. "If you ever suspect someone is hurting my granddaughter, you must not stay silent. Being a mother is not just about love, it's about stepping up when it matters." I looked at my daughter, her cheeks marked by cold, lips chapped, eyes emptied of trust, and I knew that if I walked away this time, there would be no next time. I asked, "How long have you been locked out?" Sophia lowered her head. "Since 11 a.m. I checked my watch. It was past 5 p.m., almost 6 hours. No food, no water, no coat. I took a deep breath, quietly pulled my mother's handwritten letter from my wallet. The paper had yellowed, the ink smudged slightly at the corners, but every word stood clear as the day it was written. If you ever need to walk through a door for your daughter, do it. I'm with you. I folded the letter, placed it in my coat pocket, then turned to Sophia. We're going in. You'll pack your things, and this time I'm not leaving. Sophia blinked, as if she couldn't believe what she just heard. But I held her hand, opened the car door, and stepped out. Each step I took marked the frost-covered path back to that house, not with anger, but with the resolve of a mother who had spent too long believing that loving from afar was enough. Sophia held my hand, walking beside me like a shadow with no warmth. Her bare feet stepped onto the freezing concrete, leaving faint prints on the thin veil of frost. The wind swept under the eaves, tossing her hair wildly, but she didn't fix it, as if she'd grown used to the pull of cold, the feeling of being abandoned, stripped even of the smallest comforts. I stopped at the door, my hand on the knob. Sophia whispered, voice brittle, "Mom, if you go in, she'll say I'm turning against the family. Then Dad will stay quiet, like he always does." I turned to look at her. That wasn't the look of a child afraid of being scolded. It was the look of someone who had learned to accept injustice as a habit, just to hold on to the last scraps of false peace. I squeezed her hand gently, said softly, "Then today, I won't let you carry it alone anymore." I turned the knob. Locked. Of course. We stood there, in the cold, in front of a brightly lit house, laughter echoing behind soundproofed walls, the house that used to be my home. I stepped back, ready to knock, when Sophia tugged my hand again. Mom! She looked up, eyes swollen red. I don't even know if I deserve to be with you. I froze. Why would you say that? Sophia lowered her head. Because if I were better, maybe Aurora wouldn't hate me so much. Dad wouldn't avoid me. And maybe you wouldn't have had to go so far away. My heart shattered into 100 pieces. I knelt down, both hands on her shoulders. Sophia, listen to me. Everything you just said is a lie someone put in your head. You are not the reason someone turns cruel. And I didn't go far away because of you. I left for work, for life. But I should never have been gone that long. Her face blurred through tears. I held her tightly, right there in front of the house, in the cold, trying to make up for years of absence. Then I stood, pulled my phone from my coat pocket, ready to call Benjamin, but paused. The last time I called, he didn't answer. Neither did Aurora. The messages I sent only got seen. I lowered my phone. Sophia whispered again. I once told my teacher, but Aurora found out. She threw my books into the yard, locked the door, said if I wanted to act like an ungrateful brat, then I could live like one. I couldn't speak. One window was slightly ajar, revealing the dining room's warm light. A long table with a white cloth, roast turkey, apple pie, red wine, all perfectly arranged. An empty chair at the end. I looked in, then turned to her. How many times have they locked you out like today? Sophia was quiet for a moment. 4. No. 5. One time was Christmas, I went still. Where did you go that night? The neighbor's car. I used the spare key. Mrs. Caldwell kept it in a flower pot. I only turned on the heater for a bit, then turned it off. Didn't want anyone to see the lights, Mrs. Caldwell. I remembered her. The elderly neighbor next door. Always wore a red knit hat and handed out candy on Halloween. I clenched my jaw, fists tightening. You should never have had to hide in a car on Christmas night, Sophia, she whispered. I know, but I didn't want to bother anyone. My heart recoiled, and I understood. I couldn't knock. I couldn't wait for them to open the door. I couldn't ask to be let in. I couldn't stand outside my daughter's life any longer like a guest. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on Sophia's hand, this time bracing for the storm. Because if the peace inside that house was built on the silence of a child abandoned, then I, the woman who gave birth to her, would be the one to break it. I held Sophia's hand again, her eyes asking, Are you sure? But I didn't stop. I stepped back, then kicked the front door hard. A sharp, blunt thud ripped through the stillness. Not a loud sound, but loud enough to tear through the artificial calm that coated that house. Inside, the clink of silverware stopped. I heard chairs shift, hurried footsteps heading toward the door. Aurora cracked it open, her perfectly made-up face glowing under yellow light. Seeing me and Sophia, she frowned, not shocked, not concerned, just a cold, thin annoyance. Evelyn, she said, trying to sound polite. What's going on? I looked her straight in the eye. I'm here to take my daughter. Aurora let out a soft laugh, the kind I'd read about in countless psychological reports on power abusers. Light, but sharp as a blade. You have no right. Sophia lives here under court order. I stepped forward, shielding Sophia completely from her. And the court will be very interested to hear how she was left outside in the cold for 6 hours because of a dropped pie tray. Aurora blinked, then shrugged. Discipline is like that. If you coddle them all the time, they'll never learn anything. I clenched my fists. There are many ways to teach, but locking a child outside in the cold, with no coat, no water, not a word of concern, that's not teaching, that's abuse. From inside, Benjamin stepped out from the dining room. He wore a white shirt, wineglass still in hand. When he saw me and Sophia, he froze. Evelyn! What are you doing here? I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on Aurora. You have 30 seconds to apologize to her. Or I call Child Protective Services. Aurora laughed. This time, not soft, but sharp and bitter. Apologize? Are you insane? That girl is a burden. She ruins the whole atmosphere of this house. Enough! I snapped, hand on Sophia's shoulder, as if to anchor the only truth left in this house. If you can't see her as a person, then at least fear the law. Aurora scoffed, but said nothing. I turned to Sophia. Go upstairs. Pack your things, what you need. I'll wait down here. Sophia looked at me, then at her father. Benjamin still stood frozen, silent. I didn't wait for him to speak. I didn't need to. Sophia climbed the stairs, her legs still trembling. As she disappeared down the hall, I turned to Aurora. You may think I'm the one who left, the one who abandoned my daughter for 5 years, but I'm her mother, and today, for the first time, I'm doing that role right. Aurora smirked, opened her mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. I don't need your approval, I just need you to step aside. And for the first time, Aurora took a step back. With Sophia upstairs, the house fell into a strange silence, a silence that I knew was just the calm before the storm. Aurora backed into the kitchen without another word, and Benjamin took a few steps back, following her. I stood in the foyer, but not for long. I hadn't come to wait for them to decide anything. I walked straight into the dining room, where the table still carried the scent of a dinner recently interrupted. Turkey, cranberry sauce, a half-drunk glass of red wine. Everything was there, except kindness. I approached the empty chair at the end of the table, the one where Sophia should have been. I reached out, brushed the edge of the tablecloth, then looked toward the kitchen, my voice quiet but sharp as a blade slicing through the fake air. Benjamin. Aurora. Come here. The clink of dishes. Benjamin appeared first, white shirt slightly rumpled. Aurora followed, arms crossed, face tightening back into its mask of civility. Evelyn, this doesn't have to be a big deal, Benjamin said, trying to keep his voice steady. We were having dinner. You could have left a message, or if you need to talk. I cut him off, eyes locked. You left my daughter out in the cold for 6 hours, over a pie tray. Benjamin stiffened. Aurora arched an eyebrow and scoffed, that hollow laugh of people who think they're above consequence. She needs to learn responsibility. Thanksgiving isn't a time for chaos and tantrums. I took a step closer. That 18-year-old girl, in 40 degrees Fahrenheit cold, no coat, no water, sitting on your porch with blue lips. That's the lesson you wanted to teach? Aurora answered coldly, not blinking. She's broken. She doesn't know how to behave in a family. I turned to Benjamin. Did you hear that? He said nothing, just tightened his grip on the wineglass, then set it down without meeting my eyes. I swallowed the rage burning at my throat and spoke in a slow, steady voice. I'm here to take back my daughter. 6 words. No shouting, no explanation, but enough to split the room in two. On one side, those desperate to preserve their image. On the other, a truth that couldn't be undone. Aurora laughed for the first time, loud, bitter, defiant. If you dare take her, I'll call the police. I'll sue you for kidnapping. I looked at her, my gaze calm to the point of freezing. Go ahead. In the meantime, I'll call Child Protective Services, send them the photos of the bruises on Sophia's arm from last summer, and the report from her homeroom teacher about her constant exhaustion. If needed, I'll bring in Mrs. Caldwell's testimony, your neighbor who saw you lock my child in the garage. Aurora froze. Her face drained of color in an instant. Benjamin still said nothing, but his expression had lost all composure. I stepped back, looked at them both, and repeated, gently, but with the precision of a sharpened blade, I'm here to take back my daughter. The first sound after my 6 words was the soft footsteps from upstairs. Sophia. She held a small, faded gray backpack with frayed straps and a paper tote bag bearing the logo of the local library. Her eyes met mine, then slowly drifted to Aurora. No greeting, no fear, just emptiness. I climbed a few steps to meet her. "Got everything?" I whispered. She nodded. But then, as if remembering, she said quietly, "I forgot my pencil case and books." I glanced at Aurora, who stood at the kitchen door, arms crossed, as if none of this concerned her. I turned back to Sophia, my voice barely above breath. "Take me." We walked through a narrow hallway, walls painted a tired beige, an old, crookedly hung family photo from some forgotten year. When Sophia opened her door, a chill drifted out, not from air conditioning, but from the absence of life. The room was smaller than I imagined. Tiny, just big enough for a single bed pressed against one wall, an old wooden wardrobe that towered above us, and a short bookshelf. No window, no heater, just a weak yellow bulb flickering overhead. The walls were bare, no posters, no photos, no sign that this space belonged to an 18-year-old girl. I stepped in and looked around. The bed had no thick blanket, only a thin sheet and a sunken pillow. Beneath it, I saw a cardboard box. I pulled it out. Inside were torn medical textbooks, their spines broken, some pages jaggedly ripped. Sophia quickly grabbed a laminated stack from inside and handed it to me. Pages she'd saved from the first book I ever sent her. She tore it up, said I wasn't smart enough to be a doctor, Sophia said softly, like recounting something that no longer even hurt. I looked at the pages. Blurred print, pencil notes in the margins, mostly fetal anatomy. I had taught her how to read those on her 13th birthday. I placed my hand on the desk. Its surface was scratched, scorched in places, as if by dripping wax or dropped cigarettes. Near the edge, a long crack held together with tape. This wasn't a bedroom, it was storage, a place to stash a child when you don't know where else to put her. Sophia pointed to the wardrobe. "That's from Grandma." I opened it. A small black-painted wooden box. Inside it, a silver bracelet engraved in slanted letters. "You are loved, Grandma Joan." I inhaled deeply, holding back my feelings. "I never wore it," Sophia murmured. "She said I didn't deserve to keep it." I clasped the bracelet around her wrist. It still fit. "Grandma made it for you." And she was never wrong. We stood there, mother and daughter, in a room where love had no place, somehow finding it again in the shards left behind. I didn't need any more reasons. The silence in this room had spoken enough. We stepped out of the room, Sophia leading, her arms wrapped around a fabric bag stuffed with the remnants of her life. I followed, glancing once more into that basement-like room, where my daughter had lived like a shadow. As we reached the bottom of the stairs, Benjamin stood blocking the exit, not with anger or control, but with confusion and a silent, drifting fear. "Sophia, you don't have to go," he said. "This is your home." Sophia stopped on the third step, didn't turn back. "Are you sure?" I whispered. "Let me," she answered. Then she looked up at the man who once lifted her onto his shoulders, who once pedaled her to school, who once called her little nurse when she bandaged teddy bears. "Do you know how many times I've been locked outside?" she asked, her voice calm but cutting. Benjamin didn't answer. "Do you remember last Christmas? When you told me to make space for your new family, and I ate alone in the back kitchen?" Her eyes glistened. "I never asked you to choose me. I just needed you to stand up, just once, and say I wasn't a stranger." Benjamin stepped down one stair, arms limp. I didn't want to make things worse. I thought if I stayed silent, it would keep the peace." Sophia gave a bitter laugh, choked, joyless. "Keep the peace by sacrificing me?" "I didn't think it was that serious." "No, you just didn't want to see it. And the truth is, you haven't really seen me in a long time." He froze, like he'd been slapped. He turned to me, pleading, "Evelyn, be mad at Aurora, fine, but don't take her like this. You don't have the right." I didn't answer right away. I turned to Sophia. "Are you ready?" She nodded, firm and clear. I looked at Benjamin, not with blame anymore, but with finality. I'm not taking her. I'm bringing her home. And if I have to stand in court, I'll say exactly that. Aurora appeared at the kitchen doorway, phone in hand. I've called the police. You'll have to explain yourself, I smiled. Not sarcastic, not afraid. And I'll be ready. Sophia turned back, looked at Aurora for the first time. Thank you. Because of you, I now know. I deserve a different kind of family. Then she stepped onto the final stair. I walked beside her. Benjamin didn't stop us. There was nothing left to stop. The door closed behind us. We stepped out into the cold, and it felt strangely light. We walked down the steps, the ground damp with cold, the sky readying to rain. I wrapped Sophia's scarf tighter, held her shoulder as we walked slowly to the car. I unlocked the door, but Sophia stood still, hand resting on the handle, looking back at the house. Once her childhood, her cookie-scented kitchen, her Christmas tree. Now just yellow brick walls sealing in years of silence. I knew she was holding on to something. Maybe habit, maybe just an old echo. I didn't rush her. A soft rattle came from the fence beside us. I turned, and there she was, stepping through the white gate. Mrs. Caldwell. Still the same silver bun, deep red knit hat with a pom-pom, hands in handmade gloves. She didn't look surprised, as if she'd waited a long time for this. Sophia, she called gently. Sophia looked up. For a second, she bit her lip, then walked toward her. I was about to speak, but Mrs. Caldwell stepped forward. No pretenses, no small talk. She looked at me, placed a gloved hand on my shoulder. I saw everything, she said, voice hoarse but steady. Not just today. Many days. I kept a journal, dates, times. I didn't interfere. Aurora threatened me once when I spoke up. She pulled a slim yellow envelope from her coat pocket and handed it to me. Copies of my notes. If you need them, for the police. Or a lawyer, I took it, my grip tightening. Thank you, I said simply, because no words were enough. She turned to Sophia. Their eyes met. No speech, just a small nod. From someone who once stayed silent out of fear, to someone who had lived in silence because she was taught to fear. I still have the hoodie you left last Christmas, she said to Sophia. Still smells like cinnamon cookies. Sophia pressed her lips together, then suddenly stepped forward and hugged her. Not long, not dramatic, but real. Sophia's head resting on Mrs. Caldwell's shoulder, like a child who had just made it through her first blizzard. As they parted, Mrs. Caldwell turned to me, like someone who once mothered too. Don't leave her alone again. Not ever, I nodded. And this time, I knew I would keep that promise. We got in the car. As I backed out of Benjamin's driveway, I checked the rearview mirror. Mrs. Caldwell still standing there, hand raised in a soft wave. Like a milestone we had passed, and would never return to. It was dusk when Sophia and I returned to my apartment. A small third-floor unit, not fancy, but clean, warm, and quiet. Something Sophia hadn't had in 3 years. I placed our bags on the kitchen counter and brewed a pot of hot peppermint tea. Sophia didn't say much. She sat on the couch, eyes gazing out the window, where the streetlight cast a soft amber glow on the damp pavement below. We had a late dinner, 2 servings of hot soup from the downstairs diner. Nothing elaborate, just vegetable broth and a few slices of toasted bread. But it was warm and smelled faintly of celery, enough to ease the cold and the day's clenched fury. As I washed the dishes, Sophia walked into the kitchen, quiet as a shadow. Mom, I turned. Can I sleep in your room tonight? Just tonight, I nodded, asking nothing more, because I understood, and I knew. This was the first time she had realized she was allowed to ask for something without fear of punishment. But peace wouldn't last long. At 8:47 p.m., the doorbell rang, 3 rapid, urgent chimes. I had barely unlatched the lock when the knocking followed, louder than usual. I opened the door. Standing there was a uniformed officer, tall, stern-faced, and behind him, Aurora. Still in her designer coat and red lipstick, but her face pale with fury and exhaustion. "I'm Sergeant Wallace, City Police," the officer said. "We received a report of a minor being removed from her legal residence without the guardian's consent." I wasn't surprised. I'd been prepared the moment we walked away from their house. Sophia is 18, and she left with me voluntarily. She has every right to, Aurora cut in, voice shrill. "She's my child by court order. That woman broke in, caused chaos, and now she's kidnapping someone else's daughter." I was about to respond, but Sophia stepped out from the bedroom, still wearing her old hoodie, hair damp from a shower, but her eyes clearer than ever. "I wasn't kidnapped," she said firmly. "I left that house because I was starved, punished unfairly, locked out in the cold, and insulted every single day." The officer turned to Aurora. "You're the stepmother?" Aurora stiffened. "I'm the legal wife of her father." "We've raised her for 3 years," Sophia continued, unwavering. "In those 3 years, she called me a burden, denied me dinner if I didn't get straight A's. One Christmas, I had to sleep in the neighbor's car. I handed Sergeant Wallace the yellow envelope Mrs. Caldwell had given me. This is from a neutral witness, detailed records of prolonged mistreatment." Aurora opened her mouth to object, but the officer raised a hand. He opened the envelope, scanned a few lines. Silence. Then he turned to Sophia. "Do you wish to stay here, with your biological mother?" Sophia nodded without hesitation. "Yes." The officer looked at me, then at Aurora. "I'll file the report. You'll be contacted by Family Services and the court if legal action is pursued. But I see no grounds to require Miss Evelyn to return Sophia. She's legally an adult." Aurora's face went white. "I'll sue. I'll sue all of you." "Do what you believe is right," I replied calmly. "Just know this time, you don't get to hide behind a door and call that a family." The officer nodded and left. Aurora followed, footsteps quick, but silent. I closed the door. Sophia stood still for a moment, then turned to me. "I did it, right?" I wrapped her in my arms. "You did more than I ever imagined. You stood up, for yourself, and this time, with your own voice outside." Their footsteps faded, then vanished. Inside our little apartment, it was just the two of us, and a sound we hadn't known in years. Silence without fear. 3 mornings later, just as I was pouring Sophia a cup of ginger tea, the phone rang. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. I picked up. "Hello, this is Officer Karen Diaz, from the Department of Child and Youth Protection, City Police." I kept my tone steady. "Yes, I'm listening. We'd like to verify some information regarding an abuse report. And there's a legal matter involving the prior custody arrangement. We've been trying to reach Mr. Benjamin Carter, Sophia's biological father, but he refuses to cooperate without his attorney present." I closed my eyes for a moment. Not surprising. Benjamin always knew how to hide behind clauses, signatures, and silence disguised as, "for the child's sake." Does he have an appointment? "This afternoon, 3 p.m. at our precinct office. If you're available." I glanced at Sophia. She looked up from her book and gave a small nod. "We'll be there." The office at the precinct wasn't large. A dark wood desk, 3 chairs, and a frosted glass window in the back. Benjamin arrived on time. Gray suit, hair slicked back, face cold, as if this were just another business meeting. Aurora was absent. Officer Diaz began first. "We're reviewing the living conditions of Sophia Carter over the past 3 years. Based on the child's statements, witness reports, and new documentation," Benjamin nodded. "I understand. Are you aware that Sophia was left outside in 40 degrees Fahrenheit weather on multiple occasions?" Benjamin faltered slightly. "No, Aurora never mentioned it. And I traveled often for work. There's a recording from a neighbor and Sophia's own testimony. Can you confirm whether you ever personally inspected your daughter's living conditions in the past 3 years?" Benjamin glanced at me. I didn't look away. I knew Aurora was strict, but I thought it was good for Sophia. After the divorce, Evelyn was constantly away. The court saw me as more legally stable. I clenched my hands. You said the court did, but did you ever ask Sophia how she felt? Benjamin turned to me, for the first time during the entire meeting. You weren't there either. You chose your career, I gave a faint laugh. I chose to provide for a child financially, because I believed you would provide the love at home. But you gave her nothing except a selfish stepmother, and a father who dodged responsibility under the label of busy. Officer Diaz stepped in. We'll temporarily suspend Aurora's guardianship during the investigation. If Sophia chooses, Ms. Evelyn can file for custody restoration. Benjamin exhaled. And me? The officer flipped a page in the file. You'll retain visitation rights, but under supervision. We also require a full financial disclosure for the past 3 years. School fees, living expenses, medical care. There's evidence Sophia was denied access to basic health services. Benjamin abruptly stood. My lawyer will be in contact with you. I stood as well, facing him one last time. You can be silent with the police. But Sophia doesn't need another father who knows how to stay quiet. She needs someone who tells the truth, even if it's too late. Benjamin didn't respond. He walked out, his back stiff, but his shoulders for once slumped, as if he finally realized he couldn't use power to cover mistakes that had already come to light. 1 week after the meeting at the police station, I filed a petition to restore custody of Sophia. My attorney, Marlene Owens, a black woman in her 50s, with a voice like steel wrapped in velvet, read over the paperwork one last time before signing. Are you sure, Evelyn? This isn't just paperwork. This is a promise, I nodded. I don't know if I'll get everything right. But I won't disappear again. At the county family court, there was no jury, just old wooden furniture, pale cream walls, and a female judge with a stern face but kind eyes. She read the file in silence for 15 minutes. None of us spoke, except the faint breaths of Sophia beside me. She wore her old denim jacket, her hair tied simply by my hand, and held my hand tightly from the moment we entered. Then the judge set the folder down. Ms. Evelyn Carter, can you explain why you're seeking custody restoration? I stood. My voice didn't shake, but it was slow, deliberate. Because I was wrong. I once thought that loving from a distance was enough, that good school fees and a stable home could replace a mother's presence. But then my daughter was left outside in 40 degrees Fahrenheit cold. And I can't call myself a mother if I let that happen again. The judge nodded slightly. Sophia, would you like to say anything? Sophia looked up. Her voice was small, but steady. I want to be with my mom. Not because she buys toys or cooks well, but because, when she held me that day, I wasn't afraid anymore. And no one's ever asked where I wanted to be. But now, I want to say it. I want to be with my mom, the judge leaned forward. Are you sure? Sophia nodded. I don't need a big house. I just need my mom. A brief silence passed. Then the judge gently tapped her gavel. Based on testimony, documentation, and the child's expressed wishes, the court grants custody restoration to Ms. Evelyn Carter, effective immediately. On the way out of court, Sophia gripped my hand so tightly I felt my chest soften. In my hand wasn't just a ruling, it was a second chance. That night, we passed a small, convenience store. Sophia looked through the glass and saw a pajama set with fox prints. I asked, Do you like it? She shook her head. Just looking. I don't need anything else. I just need you not to leave again. I knelt to her level. Then you can rest easy. I'm not going anywhere, not ever again. And when we returned to our little apartment, Sophia set down her backpack, didn't ask where we were going tomorrow, didn't look around like she feared someone would yell. She just sat down, opened her book, and whispered, This is our home, right? I pulled her into my arms. Yes. And from now on, no one can take you away. Not Aurora, not the court, not even me, if I'm ever stupid enough to forget again. Sophia giggled. her first real laugh in years. I never imagined myself living in a modest apartment, with simple breakfasts and the sound of the kettle boiling every morning. But now, every small sound carries meaning, because they are signs that I am here, not on a plane, not in a meeting in Tokyo, but in the kitchen, next to my daughter, as she reads her school lunch menu like she's choosing from a five-star restaurant. I'm learning everything all over again. Learning how to cook the creamy pasta Sophia loves, learning to schedule regular dental checkups, learning to listen to a story without offering a solution. My calendar is no longer packed with flights and meetings with international clients. I turned down 2 executive offers, not out of fear, but because I finally know what's worth keeping. We have dinner at a second-hand wooden table from the flea market, then turn on old cartoons, the kind I used to dismiss as too childish, and laugh until we're out of breath. It's just me and the girl beside me, bent over her final essay of the term. The topic: what does it mean to feel safe? Sometimes she looks up and asks, "Mom, what do you think safety feels like?" I pause, then answer softly, "It's when you don't have to pretend you're okay anymore." Sophia says nothing, but in her eyes, for the first time, I see no walls. The next morning, I didn't need an alarm. I woke because of sunlight slipping through the blinds, brushing my cheek, a kind of light that doesn't rush. Sophia was still asleep, hair tousled on the pillow, her brow gently furrowed like she was dreaming of something not yet resolved. I got up, brewed a pot of peppermint tea, the kind she recently discovered at the supermarket, then toasted 2 slices of sandwich bread we had made together the day before. Eggs, cheese, a bit of spinach. We had breakfast together on the balcony, not saying much. Just a quiet morning, with the sound of traffic in the distance and a few birds calling off-key in the city air. After breakfast, Sophia asked if we could take a walk. We both wore oversized hoodies and sneakers, stepping out onto the brick path outside our building. She told me about a life skills class she wanted to sign up for, about a conversation with an old teacher who hugged her for a long time yesterday when she heard Sophia was back. I just listened. No advice. No interruptions. And when she stopped in front of a little ceramic shop, her eyes lit up at the sight of a white mug printed with the words, "You are enough." I quietly went in and bought it. No need to ask. On the way home, we stopped at a gas station, something entirely ordinary. But as I paid, Sophia came running from behind and hugged me tightly, as if she needed to say something. No one spoke, but I knew some things can only be healed by an ordinary day. A week later, I drove Sophia to City Hall to complete her address change. As we stepped out of the building, she looked at me and whispered, "Mom, can we stop by the old house for a moment?" I didn't ask why. We simply drove in silence to the familiar street, where the 2-story white-painted wooden house stood behind a weathered fence with peeling paint. When we parked by the curb, Sophia didn't get out right away. She looked through the window. The house looked empty now, curtains drawn, flower beds wilted. Then she opened the door and stepped out. I followed. We didn't knock. No one was home. Aurora and Benjamin had moved out 3 days after the case caught media attention. A neighbor had told us they listed the house urgently, left no message behind. Sophia stepped onto the porch, her eyes falling on the concrete step where she'd once been left out in the freezing cold, her hand brushing over a thin crack in the stair. A small fracture, but now heavy with history. "Back then, I thought if I just held on long enough, they'd love me more," she said, not bitter, just honest. I didn't answer. I simply placed a hand on her shoulder. A moment later, she pulled a small silver bracelet from her bag, the one passed down from Grandma Joan, the one I gave her on the day of the hearing. She knelt and gently placed it on the step, like a farewell. Not to the house, but to a childhood boxed in silence. On the way back, she turned to me and asked softly, "Are you mad that I wanted to come?" I shook my head. No. Sometimes, to move forward, we need to go back, just once, to make sure we didn't leave anything behind. Sophia nodded, and in the soft sunlight filtering through the car window, I saw her lips curve, not into a smile, but into the lightest, most relieved sigh. I kept the landscape painting in the hallway, the only thing I ever bought for myself at 30, after the divorce, before moving to Japan. Back then, I thought I was starting over, but it turns out what I needed from the beginning wasn't a place to stay, it was a home with love. And Sophia is now focused on writing her college application essay for psychology. In her letter, she wrote about a safe space where someone who once disappeared silently from her own home is allowed to return. I read it in silence, because if I spoke, I would cry. Sometimes healing doesn't begin with tears, but with slow mornings when I make fried eggs and she slices fruit. With quiet evenings when she lays her head on my lap while we rewatch Spirited Away, where a child wanders into a strange world only to find her real name again. One day, she whispered, "Mom, you named me Sophia, because it means wisdom, right?" I nodded. No need to add that back then. All I wished was that my daughter, no matter how hard life got, would know her own worth, and never let anyone take it from her. Outside, the first snow covered the windowsill. Sophia laughed. "Maybe tonight we can build a snowman." I just nodded, clearing a spot near the balcony. We don't need anyone to certify this is a family, because those who were once excluded, when they return to one another, they don't need proof. They just need to live and care for each other every day. That was my story. And if it touched your heart, please share this video with a woman you love. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Where are you watching this from? Thank you for staying with me until the very last moment. We'll meet again, through stories that truly speak to the heart.